And it is 8 o'clock. And I want to welcome everybody to the intersection this morning. It's a beautiful day. Um, and I'm so glad that you have shown up with me on this day. Um, we're going to take about 5 minutes of announcements if we have any. And so we get as many people into this Zoom room as possible. Our briefer this morning. Larry Hufford is already with us, so we'll be able to go straight into that. I want to invite you all to mark your calendars for Sunday, April 6th, high noon. I know it's a Sunday. International Golden Rule Day is April the 5th. And San Antonio has participated a couple times in the last couple years in very different ways each time. But we're convening with the mayor, gathering at Confluence Park. And I really wish I could tell you a whole lot more, but again, it's April 6th. It's a Sunday, high noon. And we're doing it that way to help us all recognize kind of where we are. And I'm hoping we can all get our feet on the ground as quickly as possible or hear about things that are really working. But to come there where we can flow together, confluence. So more information will be coming out, and I definitely will send it out through the intersection. It's no cost. It's a gathering of San Antonians, and you want to bring a something to sit on, a lawn chair or something. Or if you're comfortable standing, that's fine too. So April 6th, Sunday, high noon, Confluence Park. Other announcements. We're quiet this morning, which is fine. We will just start maybe a little early.
Martha Ann, I think, is trying to talk to you.
I'm sorry?
I think Martha Ann is trying to talk to you.
Oh, okay. I don't see her hand. Let's see. I'll get a different
Let's
view.
look forward to Mother's Day and let's build towards Mother's Day. They're two wonderful organizations. One is Women Wage Peace in Israel, and the other is Women of the Sun in Palestine. And they work together, and this was hard to do, but they came up with a statement, the Mother's Call. And the Mother's Call basically says no more of our children need to die. We can live side by side. We can work out things as Israelis and Palestinians. So they want other people in the world, and this is not just women or mothers, other people to sign on to the Mother's Call. And so Reverend Julie Rowe and I, we've got an idea. We would like for every church, every mosque, every synagogue, every Gurdwara in San Antonio to be signing on to the Mother's Call as our show that we believe there can be peace. And please God, Reverend Julie Rowe and I will be with those women in the Holy Land that week, and we will have a Zoom from there.
Amazing. And maybe we can even do, if you're there on Thursday, we could do the intersection from there. We'll have to work on times and stuff, but I think we have time for one more announcement, if there is one.
Good morning, Ann. I just want to remind everyone again that this is Virginia from the Archdiocese, that we will be going to the Capitol on April 1st, and there's still time to register.
Okay. So Virginia, make sure you put that, and Martha Ann, make sure you put that into chat. Because what I'm hoping we can do today, as we hear some wisdom among us, but also to kind of cull together what is happening and out there in the world, going to the Holy Land or going to the Capitol, though there's some images, right? Mother's Day always was a peace day. It was Hallmark took it over and made its gazillions off of it. But anyway, let's keep track of those things and even put them into chat. And I'm gonna shift now. The other thought I have in my head though is that we have so many great community organizers in San Antonio, like who are all, I'm sure, working. If we came all together and worked the work together, what might happen? I don't know. So I want to thank Dr. Larry Hufford for showing up on such short notice. I've spent a lot of time this week trying to figure out how to even, start today's intersection. And the Peace Laureates came to mind. And I don't know how many people know here, but San Antonio has Peace Laureates, and the number hovers around 20. It's much more than that these days. But Larry is one of the laureates for this 2025. And his background is political science, international affairs. And so I know this is maybe putting him on the spot, and then maybe not. Maybe he's been working his whole life towards this moment, as all of us are and have been. And so, Larry, I'm hoping that you can share with us some insight, some wisdom. We've had some, and we might want to put that in chat too. I know that Catholic Charities, I think they lost 8 million in federal funding recently. And Bill just told us that the food bank was on the news this morning and they're losing a bunch. So, Larry, thanks for saying yes.
Sure.
Okay.
Well, if I don't lower your expectations, if you think I am going to try to come across as a wise person, we're in a lifelong search for wisdom. I'm 82 years old, and we're in a lifelong search for wisdom. And I have had the fortune of being able to travel to many, many different countries. I think over 55, but half of them have been countries at war, countries coming out of war, countries in dire poverty, like Haiti. And I have met an incredible number of persons who hit me in the face with a spiritual two before. I've taken students on these trips, and I tell them, look, you may be going as an international relations student, but I can tell you that at some point in time in this trip, you will be hit with a spiritual two before that is totally unexpected. And I, at the end of today, I want to give some examples of wise individuals that I have met. But I think I mean, the folks that are here this morning, there's a collective wisdom in everything that is being done in the name of compassion in San Antonio. And that collective wisdom is making a difference and needs to continue to grow. Just one definition of wisdom: the ability to apply knowledge, experience, and good judgment to navigate life's complexities. And certainly we are in an age of complexity. And if you look at, I just looked at one religious tradition, the Jewish. the Talmud posits that the highest form of wisdom is kindness. So this isn't rocket science. And the Talmud says, in kindness, you emphasize the importance of compassion and empathy, which is exactly what everyone on this morning has been doing, is doing, and will continue to do. So basically, to know and love one another and to love another human being is at the root of all wisdom. And I went back to Eleanor Roosevelt, who was instrumental in the starting in the passage of the International Document on Human Rights. And she has lots of quotes, but one, the world of the future is in our making. Tomorrow is now. And we certainly face that. Again, Catholic Charities, the food bank. I think we have the best food bank in the country, and it's being hit hard. And we have to find ways. I know all the universities have students volunteering, but how can we support our food bank? And what is that going to do to all the food deserts in South Texas? And Eleanor Roosevelt said, you're talking about the International Document on Human Rights, where do universal human rights begin? She says, in small places, close to home, so close, so small, they cannot be seen on any map of the world. Yet they are the world of the individual person, the neighborhood that we live in, the school or college we attend, the church we attend, the factory, the farm, the office, that such are the places where every man, woman, and child seeks equal justice, equal opportunity, equal dignity without discrimination. And one of the ideas of wisdom that I found really, I think, profound, again, is not rocket science. It's how does our faith translate itself in our personal life? And, again, Eleanor Roosevelt says, the future belongs to those who believe in the beauty of dreams. One important point, and I think for all of us who spend a lot of time collecting degrees, wisdom isn't in the degrees we hold. It's not in the intellect, it's in our character. And I'm going to give you some examples that I've experienced that I think illustrate wisdom in character. And it's awfully nice. I always told students, look, when you walk across the stage, and we have a lot of first-gen students at Incarnate Word and St. Mary's University, but when you walk across the stage, don't think for a minute that makes you a better human being than anyone else. It is the first step that you have taken on your way to trying to become a compassionate, a humane, and a wise person. And so wisdom is a touchstone of character, not intellect. And I know you all know this. This is not new to you, but I want to reiterate it this morning. The wisdom of Anne Frank, a 13-year-old girl, 13 years old. She wrote, "It's a wonder I have not abandoned all my ideals. They seem so absurd and impractical. Yet I cling to them because I still believe, in spite of everything, that people are truly good at heart.
That's why I'm so excited.
It's utterly impossible for me to build my life on a foundation of chaos, suffering, and death. I see the world being slowly transformed into a wilderness. I hear the approaching thunder that one day will destroy us too. I feel the suffering of millions. And yet, when I look up at the sky, I somehow feel that everything will change for the better, that this cruelty too shall end, that peace and tranquility will return once more. Now, in my life, I've been trying to find and experience the wisdom of that 13-year-old girl. And I want to give you some examples. I went to Central America in the heavy days of their internal conflicts. El Salvador, Nicaragua, Guatemala, every year taking students. When we went to Nicaragua, we would always go to the University of Central America, a Jesuit university. And we always met with the community of Jesuits that were professors at the university, but also on weekends would go into the countryside, into areas of conflict, and pastor to villages. So they really did understand the conflict, the Contra War. And so then, as you know, 6 of the Jesuits, their housekeeper and her 15-year-old daughter, were brutally slaughtered by Atlacatl, by Atlacatl, which was a branch of the I'm getting confused. I'm sorry. I'm 82. But I'm talking about El Salvador with the Jesuit assassinations, not Nicaragua, but in El Salvador. So, and that assassination by the Atlacatl Battalion, which was trained and armed by the U.S., was very powerful. We went with students, so when I say we, with students, to El Salvador the summer after the Jesuits were assassinated. And when they were assassinated, their heads were cut open and their brains taken from their heads and placed beside their head as a clear example to other professors at the university or those who were doing research on the war. So that summer, there was one Jesuit in that community that was not assassinated, and that was Father John Sobrino, because he happened to be in Thailand at the time of the assassinations. So he was addressing our group, and I asked Father John Sobrino, I said, Father John, you've lost your community. Now tell me what you want me to take back to the United States. And he said, you teach at a university? Yes. You teach at a Catholic university? Yes. Well, you go to commencements? I said, oh yeah, every semester I'll go to commencement. Well, when you see the students that you have taught walk across the stage and get their degree, ask yourself, are those persons going to be part of the problem or part of the solution? And if you come across students that you think are going to be part of the problem, then go home, take off those robes, look in the mirror, and ask yourself, what am I doing wrong? So he placed it back on me. And I thought, that's a wise person. Just as Jesus always answered questions with a parable, and you say, well, what do you mean? Well, give me a more direct answer. But Father Sobrino just challenged me. Then in El Salvador, we were at a displacement camp, which was in a conflict zone, run by the Lutheran Church. Bishop Medrano, and in this displacement camp, there was a woman whose son had been disappeared. She couldn't find out where he was. He was finally discovered. His body was discovered. He had been taken by the military and he had been tortured. He died while being tortured. And she said, I hated everyone in a uniform. I hated everyone connected with the government. I hate, hate, hate. And she said, I was being overtaken with hate. But the Lutheran church in the days of liberation theology had organized the displacement camp folks into groups of 10 or 12. And these were uneducated folks. Most of them had never been to school a day in their life. They could not read and write Spanish. So the liberation theology Christian-based communities idea was break them in small groups. We go to each group, we read something from the Bible, and we have them discuss it in the context of their own life at the present time. So she said, here I was, full of hate. And the reading that our group was asked to discuss was on the mystical body of Christ. And so that was a very powerful, powerful session. And I didn't sleep for 3 nights. All I could think about was the mystical body of Christ and my hatred. And on the 4th day, she said, I realized that I needed to stop hating. I could no longer hate. And I could no longer hate because of the mystical body of Christ. And so here I am with 4 degrees. She's uneducated. And I have 4 degrees. And I say, well, what do you mean by the mystical body of Christ? How do you understand that? And she said, as long as one Salvadorian is suffering, we are all suffering. And I had to come to the realization that the folks who tortured my son to death are also victims. And how could I hate victims? And I stood there and I had tears running down my eyes. And I said, I don't know that I'll ever have the depth of faith as this uneducated, illiterate, beautiful, wise human being. And then I was in India and in Ranchi. Sister Martha, we were together. But in going to a project run by Mother Teresa's sisters, and I had been critical, to show you how unwise I am, I had been critical of Mother Teresa. I said, okay, Mother Teresa takes care of the poor or takes care of the oppressed, but she never looks at the reasons why. I never hear her speak about the institutional or the structural violence being experienced. And so there we were in this home run by Sister Teresa, Mother Teresa's sisters, and it was a TB ward. All the folks there had TB, and there was one man who was sitting. I was on a porch and looking over, down on a cement floor, And this man was sitting there, a TB, he had tuberculosis. And all of a sudden, a sister of charity came up, sat down beside him. She had a bucket, she had a sponge, and she gently began to wash him. And she began to sing. And once again, you know, the spiritual two before I started, had tears running down my eyes, and I said, who the hell are you, Larry Hufford, to criticize Mother Teresa? I mean, the love that that sister has for an unwanted, unloved person is incredible. And that is so important. And again, where's my faith? And then I think of how we find it. And there are so many examples in our community. I mean, if you've heard Rod and Patty Rabel sing over the years, the songs that they have written about their neighborhood, about the wisdom of people in their neighborhood. You know, the poems that come out of the poor neighborhoods, the art that comes out of the poor neighborhoods. And who are we not to have hope? Who are we not to have compassion? 2 weeks ago on Saturday morning, I was on a Zoom with 70 international students. They came from the US, but they also came from Colombia, Turkey, and 21 of them came from the Ukraine on a Zoom. They were all education majors in universities. They were all going to be teachers. And the topic was educating for hope. And I'm saying, if Ukrainian students who have experienced 3 years of war, and 19 of the 21 were women, only 2 men, and if they can have hope, well then what's my responsibility in this world? And I just think that you have to keep on doing what you're doing. And we have to double our efforts. The food bank, Christian Charities, but it's hammering so many. Sister Martha Ann told me that she has a cousin whose veterans benefits are being cut. What is that? So we have it in our power, you have it in your power to keep on doing what you're doing, because building compassion is collective wisdom, and this city has an abundance of it, but it needs to grow. We need to double our efforts. There is no retirement. There's a refocusing, and as long as we have good health, we have to remain active. But wisdom is in our character, and what we do with our intellect. You know, when students would come to me and say, I need a reference for law school, will you write a letter of reference for me? I say, sure. Well, maybe. I say, well, maybe. Come back tomorrow with a 250-word essay telling me why metaphysically it's important for you to be an attorney at law. Because we have way too many attorneys who have never asked themselves that question. And then I'll see whether or not I'll write you a letter for law school. So I think, you know, the experience of taking students on these trips and having them experience their own spiritual moment was far more important than any lecture I could ever give, anything I could ever pass on to them. So I think just being in our community, in community, is where we find wisdom in the most unexpected places. So,
Boy, Larry, your words, it makes me think there's an effort in San Antonio of community organizing that's been happening for the last couple years, but that is youth-led and youth-voiced in geographic proximity. So it's not about forming, a youth group, but finding the young people that live right there and asking them, what are your dreams, your ideals? How can we help get there? But also, what does this community need? And how will we serve here together? And to have the young people lead that forward and then to replicate that all over San Antonio. There's some wisdom there. I was thinking about that the whole time you were talking with Anne Frank and the students that you would, there's something there. And I'm just grateful you came this morning. Um, I hope that you can stay with us for another 15. Could you
sure,
do that,
sure.
Larry?
Sure.
We usually pause here, but if anybody needs to leave, feel free to do that. So thank you, Larry, for being with us.
It's an honor.
I have no idea what we're going to be talking about next Thursday. I'm really just trusting in the path ahead to be speaking to us as it did this morning. Kendra has her hand up. Kendra?
Good morning. I just wanted to say, reading information about our community partners that are losing so much funding, how hard leadership's been working to secure funding at my own organization, everybody kind of grasping at straws. I'm a very positive person, and I respect everybody's journey and place in this world. And I've been feeling the weight of this a lot. It's kind of weighing on my positivity, but just listening to the things that you had to say this morning, sir, the experiences that you've had, things that I can never even imagine witnessing or enduring, really renewed my hope and strength and my drive just to be out there, being that positive force no matter what we're facing. We've got this, you guys. We can do this together. And I just wanted to thank you so much for the things that you said this morning, and giving him the platform to say it, because I really needed to hear that. And that's all I've got.
We don't do it as individuals, isolated from others. We do it as a community. We build community by being a community.
I just have a quick comment. A lot of like the work that we're doing in the communities, I think so many of us think that um, that we are done evolving. Because I'm reminded of Pierre Taylor de Chardin, that we're never done evolving towards and moving towards God and growing towards God. We continue to do that, and in that way, we gain that wisdom that you're referring to, and we also gain a fuller life. And so, in that way, we have to continue to move forward. But the key word is in communion with each other, and in that way, we can continue to grow and even grow in our love, which can also be power, and that is the power that we need to create the change that we need.
Rosalind, you have your hand up?
Yes. Last night, Larry and what y'all said just echoed. There was a segment on the PBS NewsHour. Judy Woodruff is going around the country interviewing people. And last night's whole thing was this elderly couple who are retired, but who are going around in the neighborhood that they lived at near in San Bernardino, California, interviewing ordinary people without 4 degrees who really have the pulse of their community, and they're bringing together community groups and culling the wisdom of people who have their ear on the ground and know what to do. And I just thought, boy, what you said, Larry, what you said, Ann, about the young people, it's really something that seems to be going to be tapped, and we need to pay attention to that. And whoever the speaker was right before me, I love that she used the word communion instead of community, because it's not just community, but we are all in communion with each other. It's a deeper thing than just individually who we are. It's what you were saying, Larry, about the mystical body of Christ. So I just wanted to highlight that.
I
Thank you.
believe that was Virginia, the fairly new peace and justice person at the archdiocese.
Met Virginia, and I didn't see her on the screen, so.
Well, her face isn't there.
Yeah, sorry, I'm still getting dressed and stuff.
It's okay.
Thank you, though.
Other thoughts, questions?
I'll only say, I mean, I think we have to focus more on, or focus, well, yeah, focus more on power, but it's not just power, like power over. That's definitely not what we want. We want power with each other and power to create that change. But that power, as you're familiar with my study, like comes from the work that we do together in organizing and forming good citizens and forming that moral compass. That work comes together and produces the ingredients that produce that good power, which really it's love. It's God's love. And that's what we have to work together and build those bridges and those relationships to build that kind of love to move and to create the change that we need.
Hmm.
Yeah, I think again, if we, rather than spending time reflecting on how can I become a wise person, it's all to me, it's how do we find collective wisdom, and it has to be in contact with others, in working with others, in sharing with others. We have to find our shared values, and in those shared values, positive values, we seek collective wisdom, which is exactly what you're doing. That's what the office of Ann is about, and how fortunate we are to be in a city that feels it's important to have an office promoting compassion. And
Which also makes,
that could
it
be
also
taken,
makes me
that
think,
office
Larry,
could be
too, of the
taken away from
upcoming,
us. Hmm?
I'm sorry, Larry, I'm
The
sorry.
office could be taken away from us
Hmm.
in the next mayoral election.
We were both, I wasn't thinking exactly that, but what I was thinking is about local elections, and that we find ourselves, I mean, we've been kind of talking on a much, in one sense, larger scale, very local, right? But, here we are in the midst of elections locally, all at the same time. And we've got we got a lot of people to choose from for mayor. Like, what do you even do with all that information, Um,
I can't get my raised hand to work on the laptop. So I'm just going to say, I put in the chat box, but I also want to say aloud that this is the beginning of the 80th anniversary year of Pax Christi. And with the First and Second World Wars, Christians in Europe said, "Why are we killing each other?" And that was the origin of International Pax Christi. It also functions on a national level and a local level. And for me personally, this has been one of the main communities, one of the groups, Jim Donovan, Tom Keene, Rosalind Collier, that this little teeny group of people has helped give me hope, has helped me keep going. And I'm grateful on this 80th anniversary. And if anybody wants to come over to my apartment before 10:30, we're going to watch the thing in Brussels together.
Wow. So there's something happening. Roseanne, did you raise your hand again?
I did raise my
Okay,
hand
good.
just when you and Larry were talking about the local elections and what's going on locally, nationally, internationally. It's kind of like we have to learn how to breathe underwater. It feels a bit like a tsunami, but this layer of grassroots people coming together and sharing their wisdom is what gives me hope and helps me to take the deeper breath, being in communion and together on these things. This was a great, great intersection. Thank you, Anne. Thank you, Larry.
It makes me think at one point, Roseanne, I was working at Haven for an Olympic swimming coach who was running Haven. But I
Funny.
said something about, breathing underwater, that, the spiritual component at Haven was like
Right.
providing oxygen, breath, for people who needed, that so
Lung capacity.
desperately. And then he said to me, well, humans don't breathe underwater, right? And I said, well, then Olympic coach, for swimming, teach me, right? And I know that's true, right? But some of you will remember Mark Spitz, and he trained him. And he brought me like 24, 8x10 color photographs of Mark Spitz in different strokes, right? It was amazing. And he laid them all out in front of me. He said, now follow. So he took his finger and he went through those photographs. And you're going to love this. He said, we breathe underwater by forming pockets of air. So in those strokes, you form this pocket of air where you can take a breath. And what an image, right? And I'm so grateful, Larry, that you brought stories, those pockets of people working for peace, and I'm forming pockets of air, and where we can continue to breathe and live and have our being. Yeah. It's 8:44. Thank you all for being here this morning. Thank you all for sharing San Antonio with me and all of us. If you have ideas of moving forward or moving next, uh, dream them, share them, let us know.
Well, hug your new grandchild and
Yeah,
you'll find hope
yep,
and maybe experience a little wisdom.
yep. Thank you all. Have great days, good weekends, and we'll see you next week at the intersection.
Have a blessed weekend, San Antonio. I love you.
Thank you, Larry.
Thank you, Anne.
Thank you.